Good morning, good Erev Shabbos, everyone. Next week, or 2 weeks, we're going to be celebrating Shavuos, and one of the minhagim that I want to trace is the minhag of decorating the shul with plants or flowers or even trees, and not only in shuls but at homes as well. Where did this minhag come from? How old is it? How widespread is it? So first of all, it's a very widespread minhag. We know that in most shuls, either they'll put a stand of flowers on either side of the aron, or they may decorate the mechitza. I remember at Breuer's, the place was festooned with flowers everywhere. The balcony, the men's choir, the bima, every place was full of flowers on Shavuos. So where does this custom come from? How appropriate is it? How old is it? Let's do a little bit of minhag archaeology, so to speak. Many minhagim go back to a Talmudic period or even early Middle Ages. We find nothing in the Gemara about how to observe Shavuos other than reading Megillah Shiur Hashirim, but and the minhag was staying up all night. That's mentioned in the Medrash because they overslept. So we stay up all night, fine. But there's nothing in the Gemara itself about flowers or plants in shul or at home on Shavuos. We find a lot of discussion about it in the Rishonim, or the late Rishonim, actually, I should say. You don't find it before the, 14th, 15th century. And discussion about the early. There's one source. There's a medrash called Targum Sheni to Megillas Esther, of all things, and and this medrash is written in the time. It's post Talmudic. It's at the time of the Gaonim, and it describes some of the complaints that Haman made to Achashverosh about the Jews, and describing how they observe their various holidays. And among his complaints was that on Shavuos, Jews would throw tapuchim, fruits, apples, whatever, some type of fruit. They would throw fruit off the roof of their shuls, and others would collect them. Strange minhag. They would throw fruit, tapuchim, however you want to describe tapuchim, from the roof of the shul, and people would collect it. And they would say, as they were collecting these fruits, this was the day that Torah was given to our forefathers on Har Sinai. What's the connection between fruit and Shavuos? Why throwing fruit off the roof of a shul? It's not clear. But that's the only early source that I could find for a minhag having to do with some type of vegetation on Shavuos and the connection to Matan Torah. Very strange connection. The earliest source that I could find among the Rishonim is the Maharil, who collects minhag Ashkenaz, and he writes that on Shavuos, spices from different plants and roses would be spread on the floor of the shul, so that you walk into the shul and there'd be an aromatic, aroma in the shul. Spices and roses, rose petals on the floor of the shul. I don't think we see that today anymore. A contemporary, a little bit later, also mentions the minhag of plants and spices on the floor of the first day of Shavuos. Second day doesn't matter. First day of Shavuos. Those are two early sources for this minhag. The Ramah in Shulchan Aruch says that we put plants in shul as a way of remembering the simcha of Matan Torah. He doesn't explain what the connection is between plants and Simcha of Matan Torah. So now we have to figure out what the connection is and where this minhag comes from and why it's so widespread. There's a machlokas in the Gemara in general, or Lozner of Yeshua, that how do we celebrate Yontif in general? Is it all for Hashem, or is it all for Lashem, or all for yourself to enjoy it, Lachem? And we paskin pretty much that Chetzio Lashem, Chetzio Lahem. Half of the day should be spent for Hashem, and the other half you could enjoy in physical adult with food, whatever. But there has to be some balance between them. So I guess enjoying the aroma of fragrant spices and plants might be the lachem part of celebrating Yontif. And Rashi comments that on Shavuos you have good food and you have drink to display the pleasantness of Matan Torah. Again, most people would say that that's accomplished by staying up all night learning Torah, but all right. What's the connection between simcha of plants and spices and Matan Torah? So we have to look at the Torah for a source. And the Lavush, contemporary, it's 16th century, says that Har Sinai was lush with vegetation. Now, we're not sure today, by the way, exactly where Mount Sinai is in the desert. The Arabs have a place called Jebel Musa, which they claim is Har Sinai. We're not exactly sure which is the actual Har Sinai. It's not the biggest mountain, nor do we know if it's lush with greenery. But apparently, according to the Chumash, there was lush greenery and vegetation on Har Sinai. Or else, why would you say in the Torah, Gam Hatzon v'Habaka al Yilru el Molach Baruch Hu? When the Torah was being given, Moshe tells the people, keep your animals away. Don't let them forage. Don't let them graze. Well, obviously, if there were no vegetation there, they couldn't graze. So obviously there was lush vegetation, grass and plants and flowers on Har Sinai. And that's the connection that some of the Achronim make to decorating with flowers and plants on Shavuos, because Har Sinai was lush with greenery as well. And Matan Torah, Mount Sinai, Har Sinai, so that would be a connection right there. That's one, probably the standard interpretation of why we do it. The fact that it's not mentioned in the earlier sources is a separate question. The Achronim write about it. Also, they say, for example, that when the Aseres Adibros were given, the entire world was filled with a pleasant fragrance. Nice medrash. The Alshich, in his comments on Chumash, says that the story about Ruvain and the Dudaim, the mandrakes, that's what I call it, took place on Erev Shavuos. And Yisachar was conceived that evening, and in the schus of Torah, Yisachar was born. And Yisachar is connected with the study of Torah. Okay. And the Dudaim were spices, and therefore we spread spices in the shul on shul. Again, they used to do it on the floor. We don't do it on the floor anymore. We just decorate the shul with flowers and plants. I remember as a child, we lived in a blue-collar working-class neighborhood. I don't think there was a florist anywhere near where we lived. Florists were not in our neighborhood. However, every year on Shavuos, my father, Oliver Shalom, would come home with these huge flowers. I don't remember what they were called, but they're very long-stemmed, big flowers that he'd bring home every Shavuos. So that's a memory that I have from my childhood. Okay. From a halachic perspective, the Magen Avram says that when you smell the spices and you make a bracha, I know saying reach tov or isfei b'samim, whatever bracha you're making, bori minei b'samim, don't do it during the time of davening when you're not allowed to speak. So that's a halakhic footnote to the practice that people used to do. It's interesting that the Chassam Sofer in the 19th century, early 19th century, so he says that according to the Gemara, the Jewish people are compared to a tapuach. A tapuach is generally considered an apple. Just like a tapuach, the fruit emerges before the leaves, when it starts to ripen. Jewish people said Naseh before Nishma. It's a nice drasha. Naseh before Nishma. Tosfos, by the way, talks about tapuach being an esrog, which fruit remains on. By the esrogim are on the stems of the plants all year long. So similarly, that we remember the esrog, which presents Nasev and Ishmael, because it's whatever the drasha that he makes on that. But it's interesting that tapuach, when we talk about tapuach as an apple, the Chazal talk about it as an esrog. And again, how we got from throwing apples or esrogim off the roof to putting plants in the shul is an interesting concept that I don't know how to connect the two. But apparently this was an old minhag, some way connecting vegetation, fruits, flowers, plants with the holiday of Shavuos. It's interesting. In Shiur Shiurim, you have the pasuk Kashoshana ben achochim, like a rose among the thorns. A king had a Midrash says the king had a field full of fruit, and he gave it to a farmer to take care of, but the farmer didn't do a good job, and everything became weeds and thorns. The king went through this field that he was expecting to be well tended, but it wasn't. And he found one rose among all the thorns. And similarly, the world is like full of thorns, but the Jewish people came along and accepted the Torah, which was like the rose among the thorn bushes. This was a drasha that the Medrash seems to make. And therefore, we decorate our shuls and homes with flowers. Halachically, interesting, that Shavuos, according to the Mishnah, there are different Rosh Hashanahs in the year. And the Rosh Hashanah for fruit, the day in which the fruit is, where the trees are judged, whether they'll have a bountiful harvest of fruit or not, is on Shavuos. And that's why we put trees, interestingly, in shul. So apparently there were places in Poland where they actually put small trees in shul, not just fruits or flowers or plants. They actually put trees in to remember that it's the judgment day for fruit trees, which is not the connection to Matan Torah. There you have a Talmud. The Mishnah says Rosh Hashanah Leperos is on Shavuos. Nothing to do with Matan Torah. So it's another reason why people would put trees or plants in shul on Shavuos. There's another interesting reason, and there's a fascinating. And the Medrash is very creative in many, many ways. And the rabbis find interesting things. Shavuos apparently was the day that Moshe Rabbeinu was taken out of hiding and put into the bulrushes in the Nile. Moshe was born on the 7th day of Adar and was hidden for 3 months, according to Chumash. That means he was put on the water on the 6th or 7th day of Sivan. which were, again, he was put into the Nile, surrounded by bulrushes and all types of weeds or reeds. Another reason for vegetation on Shavuos. Fascinating. Things that grow in the water. Okay. So all this explains why we have flowers. It's a minhag that is well established. However, along comes the Vilna Gaon, 18th century. And he says that, first of all, this is a minhag, number one. And since the Christians have adopted a minhag of decorating their churches with flowers and plants, we should not imitate them, and we should not do this. Let me just read it for you. Where is it? Fascinating Vilna Gaon. And those that followed him as well. Find it here. He says, "B'Shavuos ein lahamid ilanos." Apparently, they actually had trees in shul. On Shavuos, don't put trees in shuls. First of all, first, it's only a minhag, number one. V'lo midina. It's not a halakha practice.
What's that?
It's okay now, but
Who v'nachon levatel. This is something that the church does, and we should not imitate them. So it's a separate halacha of not imitating what the goyim do. And those who and the many of those who follow the Vilna Gaon latch on to the whole halacha of chukas akum. We are not allowed to imitate goyim. Now, the question is, if something was originally a Jewish practice taken over by the goyim, does that mean we can't do it? And this is an interesting machlokas achronim. Those who follow the Vilna Gaon, for the Aruch HaShulchan and the Chayodam, it says that there are those who put trees in the shul, but he says, the Aruch HaShulchan says, B'doro shel fanenu, the previous generation, meaning the Vilna Gaon, bitlu ilanos v'asavim, mitamam sheyedu hagdolim shebedor. They knew that this was inappropriate, and therefore we should follow their minhag. Now, there are a few places today that follow the Vilna Gaon's minhag, but I would say the majority of the Jewish world does put greenery in their shuls and have flowers in their homes on Shavuos. Only those who are staunch followers of the Gra would refrain from this. But the whole notion is a separate presentation on what is chukas akum. Does that mean everything that the goyim do we can't do? And it's a fascinating discussion, not for now, but if goyim wear suits and ties, does that mean we shouldn't wear suits and ties? Well, the Hasidim say, yeah, we shouldn't, because we don't want to imitate the goyim. That's why they dress the way they do. Be different.
In many cases, they steal from our religion. So therefore, we can't go back. So we can't do it.
It's a very strange. I mean, all the pageantry in the Catholic Church and the various vestments that they wear and the hats and all the spices and it's all taken from the Kohanim. I mean, that they imitate, but once they've done it, should we do it also? For example, churches have organs. So the Reform movement adopted that as well, which is why we don't have music instruments. Obviously, at Shabbos, you can't have musical instruments, but this transcultural borrowing goes on all the time. So how far does it go? It's a fascinating discussion, not for now, but it's just interesting in general how far we extend imitating the goyim. If imitating them has to do with religion, I can understand it. If imitating them doesn't have to do with religion, that's another story. And there are a number of tshuvos that we could look at. It's interesting that Rav Elyashiv, who died in 2012, great posek in Israel, he says that even though, that's interesting, most of the minhagim in Eretz Yisrael follow the Vilna Gaon. Because in the first wave of immigration from Europe to Israel were students of the Vilna. The Vilna Gaon tried to go to Israel, he couldn't make it. His students made it. And that's why most minhagim in Yerushalayim and other places in Israel follow the minhag agrua. Rabbi Yoshev says, in Eretz Yisrael, however, it's okay to put plants and vegetation in the shuls. Why? Because, first of all, in Eretz Yisrael, most of the houses of worship are mosques. Most of the people are Arabs, not Christians, even though there are churches in Israel. But since the major religion there is Islam, and the major, the people are Arabs, therefore, it's not so much a concern. He was really worried about putting trees in the shul. Today, I don't think people put trees in the shul at all. But the connection between Shavuos, Matan Torah, vegetation, whether it's Har Sinai being lush with greenery, whether it's the fact that they used to throw esrogim or apples off the roof, according to the Targum Sheni, or the halachic reason that on Shavuos we're judged for the fruits, as Rosh Hashanah for Ilanot. All of this combines together to the minhag that we have in most of our shuls to put greenery either next to the aron or on the bima or on the mechitzos, but we do try to simulate the ruach, the aroma of flowers that was probably permeating Har Sinai when the Torah was given, in addition to staying up all night and learning Torah. So I just wanted to share the history of this development of this beautiful minhag that unless you are a very staunch supporter of the Vilna Gaon, in most Jewish homes and in most shuls, they do have flowers or plants on Shavuos. Fascinating minhag. Yes.
I'm just thinking of like Eitz Chaim Hi Lamachazikim Ba. So, if it's Shavuos and like Eitz Chaim, it's the kesher there.
It's a very nice Russia. Eitz Chaim Hi, Torah is a tree of life. Good, it's an actual tree. But I don't recall, and maybe one of you has seen this, I don't recall seeing trees in shuls on Shavuos. That was the original minhag in many places. But plants and flowers, yes, all over the place. Well, it's a very beautiful minhag that we should maintain. Any other questions, comments, critiques? Okay.
Have a great Shabbos.
Have a
Good
wonderful
Shabbos, everyone.
Have a wonderful Shabbos.
Thank you. Have a good one.